If you were watching the news on Valentine's Day, you saw a woman in deep anguish with a black cross on her forehead. Valentine's Day was also Ash Wednesday, and she bore ashes as she stood outside a school in Parkland, Florida, not really aware whether her children had been murdered. This is how we started our Lenten season of 2018. And then for 3 weeks during our Lenten season, the city of Austin, Texas, lived with the nightmare of a serial bomber, which came to an end just before Holy Week. Most of us placed ashes on our foreheads on Ash Wednesday, and we heard the challenge to rend our hearts, to not let them get hardened. Well, certainly the tragedies and evil that we see around us can harden our hearts and can lead people to despair. As we celebrate Easter of 2018, we're called and challenged to be a people of hope and not a people whose hearts have been hardened by the violence and evil that we see in our world. What we gather here this morning to celebrate is the Christ who gives us the purest image of who this God is that we so struggle to understand. A God who entered our world through this man, Jesus, and like us, experienced all the joys and all the pains and evils of life. God became known to us through this Jesus, who delivered the message that there's always hope, that good will conquer evil, that death is not the end, that the good always triumphs over the bad. Back in 1977, when it was first released, the first Star Wars movie only bore the title Star Wars. Later, the subtitle A New Hope was added, and with it, a subtle intimation of what the series was going to be all about. The Star Wars saga explores lots of ideas, but one that it keeps cycling back to is the idea of hope. Asking the question, where does it come from? Why? And when it looks like the last glimmer of hope has been extinguished, is there any reason to go on? As we come together this Easter of 2018, so much has happened since last Easter. And many people do wonder what kind of future we are headed to, or what kind of future we will leave the children. For decades now, each Star Wars installment has explored those ideas, moving from hope to despair and back again, as a fundamentally moral political battle wages between a dark side bent on its own immense power and a scrappy bunch of rebels who dare to think that everyone matters. And now, 40 years later, after that series started, the 8th installment in the Star Wars series, The Last Jedi, repeats the same theme. The rebels never give up fighting the dark side. In that 8th installment of Star Wars, Kylo Ren, the son of Han Solo and Princess Leia, has embraced the dark side of the Force and bowed to the power of the Sith Lord named Snoke. Donned in a black robe and helmet, like his grandfather Lord Vader, Ren believes that he has crushed the rebellion once and for all. But Snoke knows better. Returning from an apparent victory for the dark side, Ren is chastised by his master. Snoke says to him, "You are no Vader. You're just a child in a mask." And Ren responds, "I gave everything I had to you, to the dark side." And Snoke retorts, Skywalker lives. The seed of the Jedi lives. As long as he does, hope exists. What we celebrate today is that Jesus lives, and as long as he continues to live in our hearts, through our lives, through the decisions we make, through the choices we make, hope exists. We, you and me, become the members of the rebellion against the darkness that definitely wants to take over our world. The rebellion that Easter calls us to is a rebellion of hope. And rebellions, as we know, live as long as they are led. It's true in the Star Wars universe. It's true in our universe as well. And we are called as Easter people to lead the rebellion. Some people live as though hope is a concept reserved to long ago or relegated to a galaxy far away. And they put up with hate reigning and lies ruling and fear sitting as a monarch in the hearts of those who have surrendered to despair. Easter challenges you and me to never surrender to despair, to never surrender to the hate, the lies, or the fear. The true Christian Catholic is part of a rebellion subverting lies and hate and fear. The true Christian Catholic is part of a countercultural existence led by a lowly Galilean carpenter. Some who believe died long ago. But by our being present here this morning, I believe that we believe that he lives. And because he lives, hope exists. And we see this happening, we see this reality happening all over our world, that good people rebel against the darkness. It's seen in Clint Eastwood's latest film, The 1715 to Paris, which ultimately celebrates the ordinary by contrasting it with the extraordinary actions of a few good men. It's moving, it's inspirational, it's about goodness and being prepared to act for the common good, to choose others over self. And the film upholds the idea that character really does matter, and that it's our intelligence rather than our guns that may save our lives. It's about courageous, ordinary men who confronted a terrorist attack on a train headed to Paris. It was a real story. And the real heroes of the story actually played the major roles in the film. And at a ceremony to confer the Legion of Honor on these ordinary heroes, French President François Hollande stated this. He said to them, "Your heroism must be an example for many and a source of inspiration. Faced with the evil of terrorism, there is a good, that of humanity. You are the incarnation of that good." Easter calls you and me to be the incarnation of that good. Easter is the celebration of the incarnation where Jesus comes into this world to give us an experience of the goodness, compassion, love, and forgiveness of this God that we have a difficult time understanding. Jesus, whose life was one of always struggling for the common good, always choosing the good of others over himself. So today, as we gather, we celebrate the incarnation of hope. We began Lent with ashes and violence. We come to the end of these 40 days celebrating the man who gives us hope, who's promised us hope. And you and me, we are called to be an incarnation of that hope. We are called to shout out to the world that Jesus does live. He lives through us, through our hearts, through the choices that we make, through how we deal with one another, how we choose good over evil. And we are called today to shout out that good always wins out, that we will never despair, and that we will never lose hope.